A solitary millionaire boarded the wrong train and, without planning it, arrived in a village where no one knew who he was. There, far from the limelight, he found something he had never bought: real love. Liam O'Connell observed the crowded platform as his chauffeur placed the designer leather valise beside him. He had never taken a train before. In his 42 years of life, he had always had chauffeurs, private jets, and helicopters at his disposal. But that morning, waking up in his penthouse with a panoramic view of Dublin, he had felt an inexplicable emptiness. "Are you sure you don't want me to accompany you, sir?" asked Seamus, his chauffeur of 15 years, with evident concern. Liam adjusted the platinum watch on his wrist and shook his head. "I need to do this alone." The words resonated with a different weight as he spoke them. He had been alone his entire life, surrounded by people, yet profoundly solitary. His latest divorce, his third, had finalized just 2 months prior, leaving him several millions poorer and with the same sense of emptiness that had accompanied him for as long as he could remember. The electronic display indicated 5 minutes until the train's departure. Liam had never had to pay attention to schedules. The world waited for him, not the other way around. But today, he had decided to be an ordinary man, someone anonymous among the crowd. He had dressed in the simplest clothes he owned, designer jeans that cost more than most people's monthly salary on that platform, an Egyptian cotton shirt, and Italian shoes that, despite their simplicity, betrayed his status. "What time will you be back, sir?" Seamus insisted, accustomed to precise instructions. "I don't know," Liam replied, and for the first time in years, he was completely honest. "I'll call you." With a wave of his hand, he dismissed Seamus, who hesitated for a moment before leaving. Liam then found himself truly alone amidst the hustle and bustle of the train station. He observed the people around him, families with children, couples holding hands, elderly folk reading newspapers, young people with headphones. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, a connection. Everyone, except him. An unintelligible announcement echoed over the loudspeakers. People began moving towards different platforms. Liam checked his ticket. Platform 7, Westport train. He had chosen that destination at random simply because he'd heard his assistant mention it as a good place to disconnect from the world. He followed a group of people who seemed to be heading in the right direction. The noise, the jostling, the lack of personal space, everything was new to him. He boarded the carriage, searching for his assigned seat. First class, of course. Some things didn't change so easily. He sat by the window and watched as the station slowly began to slide away. The train started its journey, and with it, a strange sense of freedom enveloped Liam. He had no pending meetings, urgent calls, or multi-million euro decisions to make. Just him and a temporary destination. His phone vibrated. The screen showed Fiona, his executive assistant. "Mr. O'Connell, the board requests your presence at the 2 p.m. video conference. Please confirm your attendance." Liam turned off his phone without replying and put it in his jacket pocket. Today, he wouldn't be the CEO of O'Connell Innovations. Today, he would simply be Liam, just another passenger. The urban landscape gradually gave way to rural scenes. Liam leaned his head against the cold windowpane, allowing himself to close his eyes. He couldn't recall the last time he had allowed himself such a moment of absolute stillness. He woke with a start when the train jolted to a halt. He blinked, disoriented, and looked out the window. The station bore no resemblance to what he had seen in the photos of Westport he had cursorily reviewed before leaving. It was a small village with a modest station decorated with hanging flower baskets. A weathered sign read, "Welcome to Ballinahoe." Liam frowned. This wasn't Westport. He rose from his seat and approached the aisle, where a train attendant was organizing some documents. "Excuse me, doesn't this train go to Westport?" he asked, trying to control the irritation in his voice. The man looked at him with a confused expression. "No, sir. This is the train to Ballinahoe and villages to the north. The Westport train departs from platform 9, not 7. Liam felt a mixture of frustration and disbelief. Never in his life had he made such a basic error as confusing a number. His decisions were always precise, meticulous, perfectly calculated. "When does the next train back to Dublin leave?" he asked, pulling out his phone to contact Seamus. "The last train of the day has already departed, sir," the attendant replied with a sympathetic smile. "The next one leaves tomorrow at 10 a.m. The reality of his situation hit Liam like a punch. He was stranded in an unknown village, without his chauffeur, without his team, without anyone who could resolve this inconvenience with a single call. His first instinct was to find someone to blame, as he did in his company when something went wrong. But here, there was no one but himself. For a moment, He considered calling his private pilot to come pick him up, but something stopped him. Perhaps this mistake was exactly what he needed. An unplanned detour, something completely beyond his control. "Is there any decent hotel in this village?" he asked, resigned. "We have the Millionaire Lodge, 2 blocks away, and a few guest houses. Nothing luxurious, but they're clean and the people are friendly," replied the attendant, assessing Liam's evidently wealthy appearance with his gaze. Liam nodded, took his valise, and stepped off the train. The station was small with just 3 platforms and a 2-story main building with red tiles. A few people were waiting for passengers, others simply passing the time sitting on wooden benches under the shade of leafy trees. And it was then that he saw her, sitting on a bench with a book in her hands, wearing a simple green dress that perfectly contrasted with her fair skin. Her dark hair fell in natural waves over her shoulders, and though she wore no visible makeup, her face had a luminosity that immediately captured Liam's attention. She looked up as if she had felt his gaze. Their eyes met for a brief instant, and Liam experienced something strange, a kind of recognition that made no sense, as he was sure he had never seen her before. He averted his gaze, uncomfortable with the intensity of his own reaction. Liam O'Connell was no impressionable teenager. He was a man who had dated supermodels and famous actresses. And yet, this unknown woman in a simple dress at a forgotten village train station had captivated his attention in a way he couldn't explain. He headed towards the station exit but couldn't help but look back in the woman's direction. She was still watching him, now with a slight smile that seemed to hold a secret. "Don't be ridiculous," he chided himself mentally. "It's just a woman reading at a station. Nothing extraordinary." As he stepped onto the main street, the warmth of the afternoon enveloped him. Millionaire was clearly a small village, but not desolate. There were shops, a small market, some restaurants, and cafes. People walked unhurriedly, some stopped to chat, others were shopping, an everyday scene that felt as alien to Liam as a foreign country. He followed the directions to the Millionaire Lodge, which turned out to be a charming old building, painted a warm ochre with climbing roses on the balcony. Nothing comparable to the 5-star hotels he was accustomed to, but it had a certain charm. Upon entering, an older woman with a kind face greeted him from behind a wooden counter. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" she asked with a genuine smile. "I need a room for tonight," Liam replied, observing the place cautiously. The woman nodded and began registering him in a physical ledger, something Liam hadn't seen since his childhood. "Are you here for a visit or for business?" she asked as she wrote. "By mistake," he replied, surprising himself with his honesty. "I took the wrong train." The woman chuckled warmly. "Sometimes the best discoveries happen by accident, don't you think? My name is Maeve. I'm the owner. If you need anything at all, just ask." Liam nodded, strangely moved by the woman's simplicity and sincerity. In his world, interactions were always laden with ulterior motives, with hidden agendas. "We have the master suite available," Maeve continued. "It's not what you'd be used to, but it has a small patio with a garden view, and it's the most spacious." "That's fine," Liam replied, pulling out his wallet. As he completed the registration, the front door opened. Liam didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Something in the room's energy subtly shifted. "Aif, dear, you're early today," exclaimed Maeve. Liam turned slowly. It was her, the woman in the green dress. Seen up close, she was even more striking. Her eyes, which he could now see, were a deep hazel with golden flecks. They studied him with curiosity. "The last tour group cancelled their visit," she replied, her voice melodious and self-assured. "So I thought I'd get ahead on the library inventory." Maeve smiled broadly. "Perfect. Ah, Aife, may I introduce our new guest, Mr. Liam?" Maeve interjected, extending her hand, deliberately omitting his surname. "Liam O'Connell, Aife Murphy," she replied, shaking his hand. The contact was brief but intense. Liam felt a current run through his arm, something utterly irrational that he attributed to fatigue and his unusual circumstances. "Aife is our local librarian and also a tour guide," Maeve explained. "If you want to get to know Millionaire, there's no one better to show you around." "I'm not a tourist," Liam quickly clarified. "I'm just here for one night." Aife observed him with an expression that seemed to see right through his words. "Sometimes one night is enough to change a whole life," she said with an enigmatic smile before heading towards a side door. "Excuse me, I have work to do." Liam watched her walk away, disconcerted by her comment. In his world, people didn't speak like that. They didn't make poetic statements to strangers or look directly into his eyes with such intensity. "She's special, isn't she?" Maeve remarked as if she had read his thoughts. Everyone in the village adores her. She's just got something different about her. Seems interesting, Liam replied, trying to sound indifferent. Maeve handed him an antique key with a carved wooden keyring. Room 5, second floor. Dinner is served at 7 inches the dining room. If you prefer, there are several restaurants in the village square. Liam nodded and went up to his room. It was simple yet cozy, with wooden furniture, a spacious 4-poster bed, and, as Maeve had mentioned, a small patio overlooking an inner garden full of flowers. The cheapest room in this lodge probably cost the same as the tips he left in exclusive restaurants. He sat on the bed, pulled out his phone, and turned it on. 27 missed calls, 42 messages. His world trying to reach him. For a moment, he considered calling Seamus to send someone to pick him up, but again, something stopped him. He turned off the phone once more, approached the window, and observed the village. From there, he could see the village square with its traditional bandstand and trees, providing shade for the benches where people of all ages chatted. In the corner, there was a small cafe with tables on the pavement. And there, sitting with her book and a cup, was Aife. As if she had felt his gaze, she looked up towards his window. Despite the distance, Liam was certain their gazes met again. She smiled and raised her cup in a silent toast before returning to her reading. Liam stepped away from the window, disturbed by the inexplicable connection that seemed to exist between them. He decided to take a shower to clear his thoughts. The bathroom was modest but clean, with hand-painted tiles and artisanal bath products. The hot water helped him relax, letting the accumulated tension of years managing a business empire wash down the drain. Upon emerging, wrapped in a robe provided by the lodge, he heard music coming from the garden. He stepped out onto the patio and saw that some tables had been set under colored lights strung between the trees. Some guests were already seated, enjoying drinks. An older man played traditional Irish tunes on his fiddle, while a young woman sang a folk song. The scene had an almost dreamlike quality for Liam. In his life, entertainment meant philharmonic orchestras, international DJs in exclusive clubs, or Broadway shows. This simplicity, this authenticity, felt as alien as it was appealing. He changed into fresh clothes and decided to go downstairs. The dining room was connected to the garden, allowing guests to choose where to dine. Liam opted for a table in the garden, close but not too close to the musicians. Maeve personally approached to take his order. "We have hearty Irish stew tonight, a family recipe from my grandmother," she offered proudly. "And for starters, creamy potato and leek soup." Liam nodded. He wasn't used to not having options, to not being able to choose from an extensive menu of international dishes, but there was something liberating in simply accepting what came. While he waited, he observed his surroundings. The other tables were occupied by what appeared to be tourists, an elderly German couple, judging by their accent, a family speaking English, and 2 young women enthusiastically photographing everything. The door connecting to the library opened, and Afi appeared with several books in her hands. She stopped to chat with Maeve, who pointed something out towards the kitchen. Aifa nodded, and after handing the books to one of the young women, she made her way to Liam's table. "Maeve tells me you're our accidental guest," she said by way of greeting, sitting down opposite him without waiting for an invitation. "Where were you really headed?" Her frankness took Liam by surprise. In his world, conversations began with empty formalities, with predictable and calculated exchanges. "Westport," he replied, observing her with curiosity. "I confused the platform." Aif smiled. "A curious mistake for someone like you." "Someone like me?" Liam raised an eyebrow. "And what am I like, according to you?" "Someone accustomed to controlling every detail," she replied without hesitation. "Your shoes, your watch, your posture, everything speaks of a man who leaves nothing to chance. And yet, here you are in Ballinahon, because you confused a 7 with a 9. Liam felt a mixture of irritation and fascination. This woman, this stranger, had read him with disconcerting accuracy. "Do you always analyze strangers like that?" he asked, in a more defensive tone than he intended. "Only the interesting ones," she replied, unfazed. "We don't get many lost millionaires in our village." Liam tensed. "I don't know why you think your watch costs more than my annual salary." She interrupted him with a smile that softened her words. "And no one who isn't extremely wealthy wears handmade shoes of that kind for a train journey. But relax, your secret is safe with me." Liam looked at her, genuinely surprised. Most people who discovered his identity immediately changed their behavior. They became subservient, fawning, interested. Aoife seemed utterly indifferent to his fortune. "Liam O'Connell," she said, as if savoring the name. "I don't read business magazines, but even I've seen your name in the headlines. The Irish tech king, wasn't it? Or was it the solitary magnate? Journalists love those dramatic titles." Liam nearly choked on the water he was drinking. "You knew who I was from the start?" he stated, not asked. Aoife shrugged. "I recognized you at the station, but it seemed you wanted to go unnoticed, so I respected that. And yet, now you're here confronting me," he pointed out. "Confronting is a strong word," she replied, leaning back in her chair. "I prefer to think I'm offering you an honest conversation, something that's probably rare in your life." The arrival of the soup momentarily interrupted their exchange. Maeve placed the plates and gave them a curious look before withdrawing. "Why Westport?" Aoife asked, taking a spoonful of her soup. "You don't seem like the type of man who seeks out tourist destinations." Liam surprised himself by answering truthfully. "I wanted to disappear for a day, and I heard it was a good place to disconnect. Ballynahoe is better for that," she replied simply. "Fewer tourists, more authenticity. If you truly want to disappear, you've found the perfect place." They ate in silence for a few minutes. It wasn't an awkward silence, but a peaceful, almost complicit one. The musicians began playing a softer melody, and night settled completely over the garden, making the lights among the trees glow more intensely. "Why does a man who has everything want to disappear?" Aoife finally asked, her voice softer, without the challenging tone from before. Liam contemplated the question. In any other circumstance, he would have offered a superficial answer, or deflected the conversation. But something in this place, on this night, in this woman, invited sincerity. "Because having everything means nothing when you don't know what you truly want," he replied, surprising himself with the depth of his answer. "Do you know that feeling of emptiness that sometimes appears in the middle of the night? I have it permanently, even surrounded by people, even amidst achievements and celebrations." Aoife observed him with an intensity that should have made him uncomfortable, but instead, he found it comforting. "Most people go through life trying to fill spaces," she said after a moment. "More money, more recognition, more possessions. But sometimes what we need is emptiness, space to breathe, to listen to ourselves." "And what are you looking for?" Liam asked, genuinely interested. Aoife smiled, a full smile that lit up her entire face. "Moments like this, real conversations with real people, books that make me feel less alone in the universe, sunsets that remind me how small I am. I don't need much else." Maeve appeared with the main course, interrupting their conversation once more. The hearty Irish stew gave off a delicious aroma that reminded Liam he hadn't eaten all day. "It's the best in the county," Aoife assured him, pointing to the dish. "Maeve's grandmother's recipe has a secret ingredient. She refuses to share, even with me." Liam tasted a bite and had to admit it was exceptional, not the kind of molecular gastronomy he was accustomed to in Michelin-starred restaurants, but honest food, prepared with knowledge passed down through generations. "And how does a woman like you end up being a librarian in a village like this?" he asked, genuinely curious. Aoife took a sip of her water before replying. "I studied literature at Trinity College Dublin. Everyone expected me to stay in the city, to seek a position in some major publishing house or academia. But during my thesis, I visited Ballynahoe to research a nearly forgotten local poet. I fell in love with the place, its rhythm, its people. When I finished my studies, the opportunity arose to manage the municipal library. I didn't hesitate. Don't you regret it? The city offers more opportunities," Liam remarked. "More opportunities? For what?" she countered. "To earn more money? To have a more impressive title? Here, I have what I need. Books, interesting conversations, a community that values what I do. Time to write, to think." Liam observed her with fascination. In his world, ambition was the main driver. No one would understand Aoife's decision to choose less when she could have had more. Besides, she continued with a playful glint in her eyes, "Every now and then, fate sends me a lost millionaire to keep things interesting." Liam couldn't help but laugh, a sound that felt strange to his own ears. He couldn't remember the last time he had laughed so spontaneously. Dinner continued amidst conversations about books. Aoife was surprised to discover that Liam was an avid reader. About travel, he had been halfway around the world for business but barely remembered the places. About music, they shared a fondness for classic jazz. And about life in general. By the time they finished dessert, a warm apple crumble with custard that Liam had to admit surpassed that of the best restaurants. He realized he had spent over 2 hours talking with this woman. 2 hours without looking at his phone, without thinking about contracts or acquisitions, without the constant tension that accompanied his days. "I should retire," Aoife finally said, looking at her watch. "Tomorrow, We have a library event for the village children, and I need to prepare a few things. Liam felt a pang of disappointment that took him by surprise. Of course, he replied, rising to help her with her chair. It's been an unexpectedly pleasant evening. Aif looked at him with that intensity that seemed to pierce through him. Do you know what you should do tomorrow before you catch your train? She asked. You should visit the Eagle's Nest viewpoint at dawn. It's about a 5-minute walk from here. From there, you can see the whole valley. It's transformative. I'm not much of a sunrise person, Liam confessed. Precisely why you should go, she replied with a smile. Sometimes we need to do exactly what we would never do. They said their goodbyes at the lodge door. Liam watched as Aif walked down the street, her green dress swaying gently with each step until she disappeared into the night's darkness. Returning to his room, he found himself thinking about her words. Sometimes, we need to do exactly what we would never do. His entire life had been meticulous planning, absolute control, predictability, and here he was, in an unknown village after an absurd mistake, contemplating the possibility of rising at dawn to see a landscape. He stepped out onto the patio and looked up at the sky. In Dublin, he could barely make out a few stars due to light pollution. Here, the sky was an overwhelming spectacle of luminous points against a backdrop of intense black. Sometimes we need emptiness, Aif had said. And looking at that immense sky, Liam began to understand what she meant. For the first time in years, he felt a profound calm, as if something within him had opened up and was breathing for the first time. His phone remained off. His empire was still running without him, and for the first time, that caused him no anxiety. He decided that he would indeed watch the sunrise from the Eagle's Nest viewpoint tomorrow. The alarm clock wasn't needed. Liam opened his eyes when the sky was still dark, with that deep blue that precedes dawn. For a moment, he felt disoriented, not recognizing the old molded ceiling above his head, so different from the ultra-modern minimalism of his penthouse. Then he remembered the wrong train, Balinahaun, Aif. Aif, her name resonated in his mind with a disconcerting familiarity for someone he had only just met. He sat up and looked at his watch. 5:30 a.m. He couldn't recall the last time he had voluntarily woken at this hour. As CEO of O'Connell Innovations, he had had video conferences at odd hours with partners in Asia or Europe, but he always scheduled them late enough to maintain his 8 hours of sleep. Time was a resource Liam managed with the same precision as his investments. And yet, here he was, rising before dawn to see a landscape suggested by a stranger. He dressed in the most comfortable clothes he had, cotton trousers and a t-shirt his assistant had included, just in case in his valise. He put on his Italian shoes, incongruous with the rest of his attire, but the only ones available, and descended the stairs, trying not to make a sound. The lodge slept. Only a dim lamp illuminated the counter where he had been greeted by Maeve the night before. Now, a young woman who appeared to be her daughter was checking something in a ledger by the light of a small lamp. "Good morning," the young woman greeted, surprised. "Do you need anything, Mr. O'Connell?" "I'm going to walk up to the viewpoint," Liam replied, marveling at how strange that sentence sounded in his own mouth. The young woman smiled. "Excellent choice. If you leave now, you'll be there just in time for sunrise. Follow the main road north, and you'll see a path marked with white stones. You can't miss it." Liam nodded and stepped out onto the street. The fresh morning air hit him like a revelation. In the city, even at this hour, the air was heavy, polluted. Here, it was light, with a scent of damp earth and wildflowers that reminded him of his childhood on his grandparents' farm, before everything became offices, board meetings, and market strategies. The village slept, with only a few lights on in the bakeries and in homes where the day was starting early. Liam walked down the main street, observing details he had overlooked the previous night. The quaint shop fronts that decorated some facades, the window boxes with vibrant flowers on the sills, the names of the small businesses, many of them puns or references to local history. He found the path marked with white stones, just as he had been told. He began to ascend a winding trail between trees and flowering shrubs. As he climbed, the vegetation changed. Liam, who normally paid little attention to nature beyond perfectly manicured golf courses, found himself curiously observing the different plants that flanked the path. The sky was beginning to lighten when he reached the top of the hill. A wooden platform served as a viewpoint with a simple railing and some benches. And there, standing by the edge, was she. He wasn't surprised to see her. Somehow, he had expected to find her there, as if this meeting had been inevitable from the moment their eyes met at the station. Aif had her hair tied back in a loose braid and was wearing jeans and a light blue cotton blouse. Without the green dress of the previous evening, she seemed younger, more approachable, though no less striking. "You came," she said by way of greeting, without turning around, as if she had sensed his presence. "You said it was transformative," Liam replied, stepping up to stand beside her. "It is," Aif affirmed, pointing towards the horizon. "Wait." They remained in silence, their shoulders almost touching, as the sky shifted from dark blue to indigo, then to violet, to pink, to orange. The clouds, scattered like brushstrokes, captured the changing colors in a spectacle no painter could justly replicate. Slowly, the sun began to peek over the horizon, a disk of liquid fire emerging between distant hills. As it ascended, its light gradually revealed the valley spreading beneath them. Cultivated fields in different shades of green and gold, scattered small hamlets, the river winding like a silver ribbon, and Balinahoun, a harmonious cluster of low-rise buildings with reddish slate roofs. "The first time I saw this sunrise," I cried. Aif confessed softly, not from sadness, but from that overwhelming emotion that overtakes you when you're confronted with something too beautiful to process rationally. Liam didn't respond. He couldn't. Something was caught in his throat. He couldn't remember the last time he had truly stopped to observe a sunrise. In his business travels around the world, sunrises were merely the moment the lighting changed in his hotel suite or the time breakfast was served on his private jet while he reviewed reports. This was different. This, he was living, not just witnessing. "You were right," he finally said when he could control his voice. "It is transformative." Aif smiled, a smile that lit up her face more than the rising sun. "Do you know what the most beautiful thing is? Whether I'm here or not, rain or shine, the world continues with this free exhibition of beauty every single day." They sat on one of the wooden benches, watching as the light gradually bathed the entire valley, awakening colors, shapes, life. "I think I've taken it for granted my whole life," Liam admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "This and many other things. That's what happens to all of us," Aifa replied without a hint of judgment in her voice. "We get used to what we have, whether it's little or much, and we stop truly seeing it. In my case, it's been quite an expensive, selective blindness," Liam said with an ironic smile. 3 failed marriages that cost me millions, for example. "And what were you looking for in those marriages?" Aif asked, turning to look at him directly. The question took him by surprise. It wasn't what he expected: compassion, morbid curiosity about his famous ex-wives, perhaps even a comment on the frivolity of the wealthy. But this question went straight to the core of something he himself hadn't considered. "I suppose," he began, searching for the words. "Initially, with Aoivin, it was love, or what I understood as love at 25. She was beautiful, intelligent, ambitious like me. I thought we'd build an empire together, and what happened? The empire grew. We drifted apart. She wanted children. I was building O'Connell Innovations from the ground up. I worked 8-hour days. One day I came home and found a note. She had left with an artist who made her feel alive." Liam couldn't hide the bitter tone in his last words. "And the other marriages?" Niamh was a reaction. She was a model, dazzling, exactly the type of woman who would make everyone forget that Aoivin had left me. It lasted as long as a novelty takes to become routine. "And Saoirse?" Liam paused, recalling his last wife. "Saoirse was perhaps my most sincere attempt. She was a pediatrician, had her own life, her own passions. I thought this time would be different, but it turns out you can't compensate for years of emotional absence with expensive gifts and exclusive holidays." Aifa felt as if she understood perfectly. "Do you know what your 3 marriages have in common, from what you tell me?" she asked after a moment. "What?" "They all ended in disaster," Liam replied with a sad smile. "That in none of them did you mention the word love, beyond the very beginning," Aifa said softly. "You spoke of building, of reaction, of attempt, not of feeling." Liam fell silent. The observation was as simple as it was devastating. He couldn't remember ever truly feeling love, that uncontrollable, irrational emotion he saw in movies or read about in books for any of his ex-wives. He had felt attraction, admiration, even a comfortable affection, but not that visceral need to be with someone, to know every corner of their mind, to share every significant moment. "In my defense," he finally said, "I'm not sure I've ever felt that. Perhaps I'm not made for that kind of love." Aif looked at him with an intensity that made him feel exposed. "Everyone is made for love, Liam. It's just that some build so many barriers around themselves that love can't find its way in." The sun was now fully above the horizon, bathing the valley in a golden light that made everything seem new. A flock of birds flew overhead, their silhouettes outlined against the now pale blue sky. "And you?" Liam asked, diverting the conversation from himself. "Have you loved like that?" Aif was silent for a moment, her gaze lost on the horizon. "Once," she finally replied, "a love that changes you forever. It didn't work out, but I don't regret having lived it." "What happened?" "He had to go study abroad. I had my mother ill here. Distance took its toll, but the important thing isn't how it ended, but what it taught me, that I am capable of feeling something like that, with such intensity, with such certainty." Liam observed her, fascinated by the serenity with which she spoke of an experience that seemed terrifying to him, opening oneself completely to another person, making your happiness dependent on someone else. "Since then, I've had other relationships," Afa continued. "Some good, some not so good, but none have had that quality of inevitability. You know that feeling, that it couldn't be any other way, that the universe conspires to bring two people together." "Sounds like one of those romance novels you have in your library," Liam commented, trying to lighten the conversation which was becoming too intimate, too quickly. Aif laughed, a crystalline sound that seemed to merge with the birdsong. "Romance novels, like all art, stem from fundamental human truths," she replied. "They attract us because they touch something we recognize, even if we haven't experienced it." She rose from the bench and stretched, her silhouette outlined against the dawn light. Liam found himself observing her, not with the evaluative gaze he usually directed at women, but with a kind of awe at her naturalness, the way she seemed perfectly comfortable in her own skin, in her place, in the world. "Would you like to get some breakfast?" she asked. "I know a place that makes the best full Irish in the county. It's nothing fancy, but I'd love to," Liam interrupted her, surprising himself with the quickness of his reply. They descended the path side by side, occasionally brushing arms. Liam found himself telling her anecdotes from his travels. Not the usual stories of successful business deals or meetings with powerful figures, but small observations. The way the light fell on the canals in Amsterdam, the incomparable taste of coffee in a small Kyoto cafe, the feeling of infinity looking out at the desert from a dune in Morocco. Aoife listened with genuine interest, asking questions that led him to think about those moments from new perspectives. It was a conversation unlike any Liam had had before, without pretension, without ulterior motives, without the constant evaluation of what he would gain in return. The village was already awake. When they arrived, shops were opening their doors, children were heading to school with their colorful backpacks. Elderly residents were taking the sun on the village square benches. Afi greeted everyone by name, exchanging brief comments, introducing Liam simply as a friend from the city. The restaurant she took him to was a small, family-run cafe, about 10 tables with checkered tablecloths, walls decorated with old photographs of the village, and a television in a corner showing local news with the volume low. A woman greeted them with a smile. "Aif, what a surprise to see you so early." "The usual?" "Yes, please, Bridie," Aif replied. "And the same for my friend." They sat at a table by the window. Liam observed the place, so different from the Michelin-starred restaurants he frequented, and yet he felt a warmth that those aseptic places had never provided him. "Do you come here often?" he asked, though the answer was evident. "Almost every day," Aif replied. "Bridie was my mother's best friend. When she became ill, Bridie would come to our house every morning with a fresh, full Irish breakfast to make sure my mother ate something. After she passed, I made this breakfast a kind of ritual to keep her close." "I'm sorry," Liam said, instinctively reaching for Aif's hand across the table. "How long ago? 5 years?" she replied, without withdrawing her hand. "Cancer. It was difficult, but I'm grateful for the time we had together." Liam gently squeezed her hand. The contact was warm, comforting, and sent an electrical current up his arm, which he deliberately ignored. "And your father?" he asked, withdrawing his hand as Bridie approached with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "I never knew him," Aif replied, without a trace of sadness. "He left my mother when he found out she was pregnant, but I had a happy childhood. My mother was an extraordinary woman, a literature teacher. She instilled in me this love for books, and the whole village was a kind of extended family." Liam nodded, thinking of his own privileged yet emotionally barren childhood. Parents physically present but absent in all other aspects, more concerned with social appearances and family legacy than with their only child's happiness. The full Irish breakfasts arrived, steaming and aromatic, accompanied by soda bread, brown bread, and a basket of freshly baked scones. Liam tasted a bite, and had to admit they were indeed the best he had ever tasted. "I told you so," Aoife smiled, seeing his expression of pleasure. "The secret is in the black pudding. Bridie prepares it with her own special recipe. They ate amidst light conversations about books, music, movies. Liam discovered they shared surprisingly similar tastes. Both preferred magical realism to romantic drama, jazz to popular music, independent films to blockbusters. How did someone like you end up running a technology empire? Aoife asked as they had coffee after breakfast. You seem more like a philosopher or a frustrated artist. Liam chuckled, but the question touched something deep within him. My father was a banker, my grandfather too. My fate was set from birth. I studied finance because that's what was expected, though I was always more interested in literature. But then, during my final year of university, I developed an application to optimize investments. It was an immediate success. Suddenly, everyone wanted to invest in my idea. In 6 months, I went from being the son following in the family footsteps to being the founder of a startup valued in millions. And do you regret it? I don't know, he replied honestly. I've created something significant, something that has changed the way businesses operate, something that provides jobs for thousands of people, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had followed that other path. Aoife looked at him with intensity. It's never too late to explore those alternative paths, you know? You don't have to abandon everything you've built, but you can create space for those other parts of you. Liam thought of the half-written novels stored in a drawer of his desk, of the literature courses he had started and abandoned for lack of time, of the art exhibitions he attended more out of social obligation than genuine pleasure. Perhaps you're right, he conceded. But how do you find that balance? By setting real priorities, not the ones others expect of you, she replied simply, by asking yourself, what truly makes you feel alive? Liam found himself thinking about how he had felt that morning at the viewpoint. And now, in this simple cafe, conversing with this woman, he had met by chance more alive than in any board meeting or exclusive party in recent years. The sound of his phone interrupted the moment. He had completely forgotten that he had turned it on when leaving the lodge, just in case he got lost on the way to the viewpoint. The screen showed Seamus, his chauffeur. Excuse me, he said to Aoife before answering. Seamus. Mr. O'Connell, forgive my persistence. Seamus's voice sounded worried. Miss Fiona asked me to locate you. There's a situation at the company that requires your immediate attention, something about a leak of sensitive information to competitors. Liam felt reality hit him abruptly, like a cold wave erasing the morning's warmth. I understand, he replied, aware of Aoife's gaze. Where are you now? In Dublin, sir, but I can be in Ballynahone in approximately 2 hours. Liam looked at his watch. The return train departed at 10 a.m. in just under an hour. If he waited for Seamus, he would miss the train, but he would arrive in the city faster. If he took the train, he would have an hour more in this village with Aoife. Sir, are you still there? Seamus's voice brought him back. Yes, sorry. I'll take the train as planned. I'll see you at the Dublin station upon arrival. Very good, sir. He hung up, feeling a strange mix of resignation and rebellion. Just 24 hours ago, he would have ordered Seamus to pick him up immediately. He would have cancelled any plans to address a business crisis. Problems? Aoife asked, without pressing. Apparently, he replied, but they can wait another hour. Aoife smiled, but there was a shadow in her eyes, as if she already anticipated their farewell. What would you like to do in that hour? She asked. See your library, Liam replied without hesitation. The place that made you stay in Ballynahone. They paid for breakfast, Liam insisted, though Aoife protested and walked towards the municipal library, located in a renovated old Georgian building facing the village square. Despite it being early, there was already activity. Some elderly folk were reading newspapers at tables arranged under a tree in the courtyard. A group of children listened to a young woman reading stories in a corner, and 2 teenagers consulted textbooks in silence. It's not the National Library, Aoife said as she guided him through the space, but it has its charm. Liam observed the place with genuine interest. The dark wooden shelves were organized by theme with small, handwritten signs indicating the sections. There were cozy nooks with worn but clean armchairs where readers could immerse themselves in their books. Tall windows let in natural light, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. It's beautiful, he said with sincerity. It has soul. Aoife smiled, visibly pleased with the comment. That's what we try to create, not just a repository for books, but a place that invites you to stay, to discover, to dream. She led him to a special section separated by a glass door. This is my crown jewel, she said as she opened the door. The collection of rare books and local manuscripts. The room was small but impressive. Softly lit display cases protected ancient volumes, yellowed manuscripts, first editions of Irish authors, and historical documents related to the region. "This is the poet who brought me to Ballynahoe," Aoife said, pointing to a display case containing a book of poems and what appeared to be handwritten letters. Seamus O'Malley, barely known outside this county, but his poetry has a raw honesty. She carefully opened the display case and extracted the book of poems with hands that betrayed years of practice in handling delicate material. She opened it to a marked page and read softly, "It is not love we seek, but the precise moment we cease to be alone, that fleeting instant when another recognizes in us something we didn't even know existed." Liam felt a shiver run down his spine. The words seemed written for him, for this moment, for what he had been feeling since stepping off the train in Ballynahoe. "See? Perfect," he murmured. Aoife carefully closed the book and returned it to its place. "That's what I thought when I first read it, that someone decades ago had captured exactly what I felt. That's the magic of literature. It makes us feel less alone in our humanity." They continued to tour the library. Aoife showed him her favorite sections, the projects she had implemented: a reading club for seniors, creative writing workshops for young people, a digital literacy program. Speaking with a passion Liam found hypnotizing. "How do you fund all this?" The businessman in him momentarily emerged and asked. "With difficulty," Aoife admitted. "The municipal budget is limited. We receive donations, organize fundraising events, and many of us work more hours than we're paid for." Liam made a mental note. Perhaps O'Connell Innovations could find a way to support spaces like this, not as a publicity opportunity, but as a genuine contribution to places that truly mattered. Time passed too quickly. When he checked his watch, there were barely 20 minutes left until the train's departure. "I have to go," he said, unable to hide the regret in his voice. Aoife nodded, her expression unreadable. "I'll walk you to the station." They walked in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The station looked exactly the same as the day before, as if nothing had changed. And yet, for Liam, everything was different. They stopped at the platform. The train was already there, waiting for passengers. "Thank you," Liam said, facing Aoife. "For the sunrise, for the breakfast, for the library, for—" He cut himself off, unsure how to express what he truly wanted to thank her for showing him a different life, for making him feel something he didn't know he could feel, for seeing him as a person, not a title or a fortune. Aoife smiled, that smile that illuminated her entire face. "It's been a pleasure, Liam O'Connell. I hope you find what you're looking for." Something in her tone sounded like a final farewell. Liam felt an irrational panic at the thought of never seeing her again. "Aoife," he began, but the words caught in his throat again. What was he going to say? That he felt something inexplicable for a woman he had just met, that in less than 24 hours she had awakened emotions he believed to be dead or non-existent? It sounded absurd, irrational, exactly the kind of impulse Liam O'Connell never followed. The train's whistle blew, announcing its imminent departure. "I have to go," he repeated, hating himself for his cowardice. Aoife nodded, stepping back. "Have a good journey home." Liam boarded the train, found his seat by the window, and looked outside. Aoife was still on the platform, her light blue dress swaying slightly in the breeze, her expression serene, but with a touch of, was it sadness, or just what he wanted to see? The train began to move. Liam kept his gaze fixed on her until her figure became small in the distance and finally disappeared as the train rounded a bend. He leaned back in his seat, an inexplicable emptiness expanding in his chest. He pulled out his phone and saw the dozens of accumulated messages and emails. The crisis at the company required his attention, and yet everything seemed incredibly trivial compared to what he had just experienced. Almost without thinking, he searched for Aoife Murphy's name on social media. Nothing appeared. It was as if she existed only in that small village, oblivious to the digital world he inhabited and had helped to build. The landscape flashed by the window, the lush green countryside gradually giving way to the suburbs and finally to the urban density of Dublin. With each kilometer, Liam felt something precious, dissolving, like a dream upon waking. When the train arrived at the station, Seamus was waiting for him on the platform, as formal and efficient as ever. "Mr. O'Connell, welcome back," he greeted, taking his valise. "Fiona has scheduled an emergency meeting for 2 p.m. Liam nodded mechanically, following Seamus towards the exit. The station buzzed with activity, hurried people, announcements over loudspeakers, the constant noise of the city. Everything felt overwhelming after the tranquility of Ballynahoe. As he walked towards the car, he had a clear awareness of returning to a life that no longer entirely belonged to him, like an actor returning to a role he has played for so long that he has forgotten where the character ends and he himself begins. "Everything all right, sir?" Seamus asked, noticing his prolonged silence. Yes, Liam replied, forcing a smile. Just a bit tired. The journey to his office passed in silence. Liam looked out the window without truly seeing, his mind still in Ballynahoe, at the viewpoint at dawn, in Aoife's eyes. The O'Connell Tower rose imposingly in the financial district, 60 stories of glass and steel reflecting the city sky. Liam entered the building, mechanically greeting employees who bowed as he passed. The private elevator took him directly to the top floor, where Fiona was waiting with a worried expression. Liam, thank goodness, she said as soon as she saw him. We were very worried. The information leak, I know, he interrupted her. Prepare the reports. I'll be in my office. He locked himself in his spacious office and walked to the window. From there, he could see practically the entire city, a view that had always given him a sense of power, of control. Today, it only seemed distant, alien. He took out his phone and searched for information about trains to Ballynahoe. There was one that same afternoon, the last of the day. Without thinking too much, he dialed Fiona's extension. Cancel all my meetings for the rest of the week, he ordered. An urgent personal matter has arisen. Before she could protest, he hung up and called Seamus. I need you to take me to the train station, now. The train moved more slowly than Liam's heart. Every kilometer that brought him closer to Ballynahoe seemed eternal. He looked out the window, watching as the urban landscape gradually gave way to the countryside, that same journey he had made in the opposite direction, only hours before. What was he doing? The question echoed in his mind. Liam O'Connell, CEO of O'Connell Innovations, the man who never made impulsive decisions, who calculated every move with millimeter precision. He was on a train bound for a small village because of a woman he barely knew. Fiona had tried to stop him, of course. The board of directors expected explanations. Investors were nervous. The press was speculating. All phrases that would normally have made him cancel any personal plan, but today those words had bounced off him without leaving a trace. It's a matter of life or death, he had told Fiona before leaving. And perhaps it was no exaggeration. He felt something vital was at stake, something more important than contracts or stock market quotes. His phone vibrated. Another message from Fiona. He ignored it, as he had ignored the previous 20. Then, after a moment of reflection, he turned the device off completely. When the train finally stopped at Ballynahoe station, the sun was beginning to set. Liam stepped off with a small backpack that Seamus had improvised for him, containing just the essentials. He felt strangely light, without the weight of his usual executive luggage. The station looked different in the twilight. The same flower baskets, the same wooden benches, but now everything had a distinct meaning. It was the place where he had first seen her. He walked towards the exit, his heart pounding. He had no plan. He didn't know exactly what he was going to say to Aoife when he found her. For the first time in decades, Liam O'Connell was improvising. He headed first to the municipal library. The old Georgian building looked magnificent, bathed in the golden light of the sunset. He ascended the stone steps and pushed open the main door. The interior was quiet, with few visitors at that hour. A young woman at the reception desk looked at him with curiosity. Good evening, Liam greeted. I'm looking for Aoife Murphy. The young woman observed him with an expression that blended surprise and recognition. You're the gentleman from the city, the one who took the wrong train, Liam smiled. Apparently, in a small village, news traveled fast. Yes, that's me. The young woman seemed to assess his intentions for a moment before replying, Aoife isn't here. On Wednesdays, she finishes early to give a literature workshop at the Ballynahoe Community Hall, 2 blocks from here. Thank you, Liam replied, turning to leave. Sir, the young woman called, making him turn around. I don't know what your intentions are, but Aoife is very well loved in this village. We all protect her. Liam nodded, understanding the implicit message. I just want to talk to her. The community hall turned out to be another restored old building, smaller than the library, but equally charming. In the inner courtyard, under the shade of a leafy tree, a group of about 15 people of various ages sat in a semicircle, listening attentively. And there she was, standing with a book in her hands, reading aloud. Her dress was different today, a soft yellow hue that seemed to capture the sunlight and transform it into an aura around her. Her melodious voice brought the words to life, captivating her audience. Liam paused at the courtyard entrance, unwilling to interrupt. He leaned against a pillar and listened. Aoife was reading a passage from Seamus O'Malley's The Whispering Fields, one he knew well. It was the moment when young Finn meets Maeve, and the world seems to stop. When she finished reading, the group began discussing the passage. Aoife skillfully guided the conversation. asking thought-provoking questions, connecting diverse opinions, creating a space where everyone felt heard. Liam watched her, marveling. This was her element, sharing her passion, illuminating the minds of others, building bridges between people through words. So different from the corporate meetings where he shone, where words were weapons or tools, never bridges. The workshop concluded as the sun had already set. People bade Aife farewell with affection, some with hugs, others promising to read the assigned chapters for the next week. She was gathering her books when she looked up and saw him. Her expression shifted from surprise to astonishment, and finally to a contained smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Liam," she said as he approached, "I didn't expect to see you again." "I didn't expect to come back either," he admitted. "And yet, here I am." They looked at each other in silence for a moment, as if assessing what had changed between them in the few hours of separation. "Is everything all right?" she finally asked. "The crisis at your company?" "It can wait," he replied with a self-assurance that surprised him. "There are more important things." Aife tilted her head slightly, studying him with those eyes that seemed to see beyond words. "I have to close up here," she said, gesturing to the scattered books and materials. "Will you wait for me?" Liam nodded, helping her tidy up. They worked in silence, organizing books, stacking papers, putting chairs back in place. It was a mundane task Liam hadn't performed in decades, not since his student days, and yet he found a strange pleasure in it. When they finished, Aife locked the hall and handed the keys to a caretaker waiting at the entrance. "Have you had dinner?" she asked as they stepped out onto the street, now illuminated by old-fashioned streetlights. "No," Liam replied, "but I'd like to invite you this time. Is there any special place you recommend?" Aife smiled, now with more warmth. "I know just the place." She led him through cobbled streets to a small restaurant on the upper floor of an old building. The Whispering Pines Bistro announced a carved wooden sign at the entrance. They ascended a narrow staircase and emerged into a magical space. Tables arranged under colored lights, strung among pots of aromatic herbs, with a panoramic view of the village and the hills in the distance. At that hour, the place was almost empty. An older man greeted them with an affectionate smile. "Aife, what a surprise. Your favorite table is free." He led them to a corner table, the most secluded and private, with the best view of the valley that now stretched under a starry sky. "Mr. Brennan was the first literature teacher I had," Aife explained once they were alone. "When he retired, he fulfilled his dream of opening this place. The food is simple, but excellent." Liam looked around, amazed by the unpretentious beauty of the place. In another era, he would have noticed the mismatched chairs, the tablecloths that didn't perfectly coordinate, the candles in recycled containers. Now he only saw the authenticity, the care in every imperfect detail. "It's beautiful," he said with sincerity. Mr. Brennan returned with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, compliments of the house, he announced. "It's not every day Aife brings a gentleman to dinner." Aife blushed slightly, a gesture Liam found adorable in a woman who always seemed self-assured. "Mr. Brennan, please," she protested, but the man had already retreated with a knowing smile. Liam poured the wine, a local red that had no label but whose aroma promised an interesting experience. "To wrong trains," he toasted, raising his glass. "To wrong trains," she replied, gently clinking her glass against his. They drank in silence, looking at each other over the rim of their glasses. The tension between them was palpable, a mix of anticipation and caution. "Why did you come back?" Liam, Aife finally asked, placing her glass on the table. "And don't tell me it was for Bridie's cooking." Liam chuckled softly, but his expression quickly turned serious. It was the moment of truth. "I came back because when the train pulled away from Ballinahound this morning, I felt I was leaving behind something essential, something I had just found and couldn't afford to lose," he said, the words coming out with an honesty that both scared and liberated him. "I came back for you, Aife." She didn't seem surprised, but she didn't reply immediately either. Her eyes, those deep eyes that had captivated him from the first moment, studied his face as if searching for the truth behind his words. "We only met yesterday," she finally said. "How can you be sure it's not just the novelty, the excitement of something different from your usual life?" "I can't be sure," Liam admitted. "I have no charts, no projections, no risk analysis for this. I just have this inexplicable certainty that with you, I experienced something I had never felt before, and I need to explore what that means." Aife took a sip of wine, as if giving herself time to process his words. "What happened when you got to your office?" she asked, subtly changing the subject. "You said there was a crisis. Nothing that can't be resolved without me," he replied. For the first time, I understood that the company won't collapse if I'm absent for a few days, that I've built something that can function without my constant supervision. And now what? She asked, her voice soft but direct. What do you expect to happen, Liam? Do you want me to leave everything and go to Dublin with you? Or do you plan to stay in Ballinahone and become just another villager? The question took him by surprise. He hadn't thought about the practical aspects, something unusual for him, who always planned every detail. I don't know, he admitted. I just know I want to get to know you. I truly want to discover what this feeling is when I'm with you. I don't have a 5-year plan for us, Aife. And coming from me, that's quite a significant statement. She smiled, a smile that finally reached her eyes, illuminating them. You know you come from completely different worlds, don't you? She said, using the third person as if to create some distance from the situation. He, a tech magnate accustomed to luxury and power. She, a village librarian content with little, valuing things that were invisible to him until yesterday. Perhaps that's why we met, Liam replied, playing along. Perhaps he needed to see the world through her eyes, and perhaps she also needed someone to shake her out of her routine, Aoife completed, out of that perfectly organized life she had built. Mr. Brennan approached with the plates. Guinness pie, a traditional Irish dish. Liam hadn't tasted since his childhood, when his grandmother prepared it for special occasions. Enjoy your meal, the man said, discreetly withdrawing. It's my favorite, Aoife commented, looking at the dish with appreciation. The rich, dark gravy, the tender beef, the flaky pastry. Liam tasted a bite and involuntarily closed his eyes at the explosion of flavors. It was perfect. The savory richness, the satisfying texture, the hint of stout. They ate in silence for a few minutes, simply enjoying the food and each other's presence. You know, Aoife said after a while, I have a project I've been putting off due to lack of resources and time. I want to digitize the collection of Seamus O'Malley's manuscripts and other local poets, to make them accessible to the world, to preserve them for future generations. Interesting, Liam replied, intuiting where she was headed. And you have a technology company that could help with that, she continued. You also have experience in project management, in securing funding, in making things happen. Are you proposing a professional collaboration, Aoife Murphy? Liam asked with a mischievous smile. I'm proposing a meeting point, she replied seriously. A place where our worlds could intersect in a meaningful way for both of us, where we could get to know each other better by working together on something that matters, without completely disrupting our separate lives. Liam considered the proposal. It was brilliant, really. A project that would allow him to spend time in Ballinahone regularly, to get to know Aoife in her element, without the pressure of immediately having to define what kind of relationship they had or where it was heading. I like the idea, he finally said, but with one condition. Which is, she asked, raising an eyebrow. That you agree to come to Dublin occasionally, to get to know my world too. There are concerts, exhibitions, places I'd like to show you. Aoife seemed to consider the proposal. I think I could endure the big city occasionally, she conceded with a smile. As long as I can always return to the peace of Ballinahone. It's a deal then, Liam said, extending his hand across the table. Aoife took it, but instead of shaking it, she intertwined her fingers with his. The contact sent an electrical current up Liam's arm, making his heart race. It's a deal, she confirmed, her eyes fixed on his. They continued dining, their hands reluctantly parting when necessary, the conversation now flowing with more lightness. They spoke about the digitization project, about the local poets, about the possibilities of collaboration between the library and O'Connell Innovations. But beneath these practical conversations flowed a current of something deeper, a connection that went beyond words or plans. When they finished dessert, a traditional apple crumble that rivaled the lodges the night had considerably advanced. The other tables had emptied, and Mr. Brennan had discreetly left the bottle of wine, retreating to the kitchen. I should walk you home, Liam said, aware of the hour. I live 2 blocks from here, Aoife replied, but I'd like you to walk me. They settled the bill, Liam insisted, Aoife protested. Finally, they reached an agreement where she would leave the tip, and they stepped out into the fresh Ballinahone night. The streets were quiet at that hour, with only a few neighbors sitting on their porches enjoying the night air. They walked side by side, their hands occasionally brushing, each accidental contact sending small jolts of energy between them. The full moon illuminated the path, making the streetlights unnecessary. It's here, Aoife finally said, stopping in front of a small, single-story cottage with white walls and a bright blue door. A modest but well-tended garden adorned the front with night-blooming flowers that gave off a sweet scent in the darkness. They stood at the door, that awkward yet possibility-laden moment that follows a first date. Except this wasn't exactly a first date, nor were they inexperienced teenagers. They were two adults who had lived long enough to recognize when something extraordinary was happening. Aife, Liam began, his voice deeper than usual. These 2 days have been, I know, she interrupted him, gently placing a hand on his cheek. For me too. And then, with the naturalness of something inevitable, he leaned in and kissed her. Their lips met softly at first, almost timidly, as if testing unknown territory. But quickly the kiss deepened, decades of experience, and yet the absolute novelty of finding something authentic, something that resonated on a level neither of them had explored before. When they finally separated, both were breathing heavily. Liam rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed, trying to process the intensity of what he had just felt. "This is mad," he whispered. She nodded, not pulling away. "Absolutely irrational. I've never been good at this," he confessed. "At relationships, at real connections. I've always been better with numbers, strategies, tangible things." "I know," she replied, gently caressing his cheek. "And I like that you're honest about it. I don't expect perfection, Liam, just authenticity." He nodded, understanding the depth of her words. Authenticity, something that had been absent from his life for so long that he had almost forgotten its meaning. "I should go," he said, though every fiber of his being resisted the idea. "I have a room at the lodge." Aife nodded, stepping back. "Will I see you tomorrow?" she asked. "Definitely," he replied. "We have a project to plan." She smiled, that smile that seemed to illuminate her entire face and that Liam already considered one of the treasures of the universe. "Good night, Liam O'Connell," she said, opening her door. "Good night, Aife Murphy," he replied, waiting until he saw her safely inside before walking away. He walked back to the lodge with light steps, as if he had left behind a weight he had been carrying his whole life, without even knowing it. The starry sky above him seemed brighter, the air fresher, the nocturnal sounds of the village more musical. His phone remained off in his pocket. His empire was still there, awaiting his return. But for the first time in decades, Liam O'Connell was completely present in the moment, without an eye on the future or what he should be doing. 3 months later, the digital library of Ballinahoan poets was inaugurated with a simple but moving ceremony. The project, a collaboration between the Municipal Library and the O'Connell Foundation, a new branch of O'Connell Innovations dedicated to cultural preservation and education, had transformed the rare manuscript section into a modern space where tradition and technology coexisted in perfect harmony. Liam stood beside Aife as she cut the ribbon, both smiling at the applause from attendees, villagers, cultural representatives from the region, and even some O'Connell Innovations executives who had traveled specially for the occasion. The past few months had been a roller coaster. Liam had completely reorganized his life, delegated responsibilities at the company, hired a new COO to handle daily operations, and purchased a small cottage in Ballinahoan, not far from Alfie's. He spent 3 days a week in Dublin and 4 in the village, a balance that initially seemed impossible, but which had proven surprisingly viable with the right technology. Aife, for her part, had visited Dublin several times, attending concerts and exhibitions with Liam, getting to know his world, but always returning to Ballinahoan, to her books, to her community. She had been honest from the start. She wouldn't abandon what gave meaning to her life, even for someone as extraordinary as Liam O'Connell, and he wouldn't have it any other way. What had drawn him to Aife, what kept him fascinated every day, was precisely that authenticity, that connection to what truly mattered. After the ceremony, as guests enjoyed a reception in the library courtyard, Liam took Aife's hand and guided her to a quiet corner. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small book from his pocket. Aife took it with curiosity. It was a first edition of poems by Seamus O'Malley, the poet who had drawn her to Ballinahoan, bound in soft leather with her name engraved in gold letters. "Liam," she whispered, turning the pages with reverence. "How it was difficult to find," he admitted. "But I have resources." She shook her head, still astonished. "It's too much." "In reality," he replied, gently taking her hand, "it's just the beginning." Aife looked up, a silent question in her eyes. Liam took a deep breath. What he was about to say wasn't something he had rehearsed or meticulously planned, as he usually did with every important decision in his life. It was something he felt in every cell of his body, in every corner of his soul. "These months with you have been the most significant of my life," he began. "I've learned more about myself, about what truly matters, than in 40 years of business success. And most importantly, I've learned to feel, to be present, to value the simple things I once overlooked." Aif squeezed his hand, encouraging him to continue. I don't know exactly how this will work long term, he continued. Our lives are so different, but I know I want to discover it with you. I want to build something real, something authentic, not because it's strategically advantageous or socially expected, but because being with you makes me feel more alive than I ever have. Aoife's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Are you proposing something specific, Liam O'Connell? She asked, her voice slightly trembling, but with a touch of humor. He smiled, recognizing her attempt to lighten the moment's intensity. I'm proposing we continue building bridges between our worlds, he replied, that we continue discovering together how to balance your library and my company, your village and my city, your simplicity and my complexity, and that perhaps, at some point, when we're ready, we consider making those bridges permanent. That's a conditional yes to a question you haven't even asked yet, she teased, though her eyes revealed how much his words had moved her. It's an unconditional yes to a future together, whatever form it takes, he replied seriously. I love you, Aif Murphy, and I never thought I'd say those words, let alone truly feel them in every fiber of my being. A tear finally escaped, rolling down Aif's cheek. And I love you, Liam O'Connell, she replied, as improbable, irrational, and wonderful as it is. Liam pulled her close and kissed her, uncaring that they were in full view of all the attendees. The murmurs and approving smiles of those present barely registered in his consciousness. In that moment, only the two of them existed, the millionaire who had taken the wrong train and the librarian who had shown him a different way to see the world. Later, after all the guests had departed, they walked together towards the Eagle's Nest viewpoint, where they had watched the sunrise months ago. The night was clear, the sky a blanket of stars that seemed to stretch into infinity. Do you know what's most astonishing? Aif asked as they sat on the same wooden bench. That all the events that led us to this moment depended on a mistake. A simple error, confusing Platform 7 with Platform 9. Liam smiled, intertwining his fingers with hers. It wasn't a mistake, he replied with conviction. It was the universe correcting my course. They stayed there under the stars, contemplating the valley that stretched before them, the small village that had changed the course of their lives, and the future that now unfolded, unpredictable, challenging, but infinitely richer and more authentic than they had ever imagined. And as the night advanced, Liam O'Connell, the millionaire who all his life had sought to control every aspect of his existence, found himself for the first time thanking something he couldn't rationally explain, the miracle of getting lost only to finally find himself.